10 Little Fingers and 10 Little Toes arose because I was speaking at an event in Boston. And I had 2 days prior to this event phoned my American editor and my Australian literary agent and said, I'm not writing anymore. In fact, I'd cried. I mean, I didn't say, I was sobbing. So that was, I think, on a Wednesday. And on the Friday, I was in Boston talking to parents who had babies with them and little children. And at the end of the event, when they were asking me to sign books, they were leaning over the table with the babies. And sometimes, little babies' fingers are so tiny, you can't believe how tiny they are. And you'd look at these minute digits, and then their little fists like this, and you have to put your finger in the little fist. You can't resist but put your finger in their little fist. And some of the babies were black, and some of them were brown, and some of them you could tell were adopted because they were different colors from their parents, and some people were poor and some people were well off, and some people were young parents, and some people were much older parents. And yet all the babies, had 10 little fingers and 10 little toes. It didn't matter who they belonged to or what color they were. Now, I didn't notice that. I did not notice that objectively. But then I went home to Australia via a very long route. It took me 40 hours to get home. And I thought of these babies. And by then they were far away from me, and there was one little baby who was born far away. And then I just said to myself, and another who was born on the very next day. And both of these babies, as everyone knows, had 10 little fingers and 10 little toes. So I thought, ooh, that's the first verse of a story, perhaps. This is the first verse. But I was still so drowsy that I couldn't wake up. I could not wake up. But I was drowsy enough to dream the story. So I thought of the next verse and the next verse and the next verse. And when I finally sort of slapped myself awake, or when the flight attendant, woke us all up and gave us food, I quickly got out a notebook and I wrote very, very fast the whole story. I was terrified I would forget it. I wrote so fast that the woman, a total stranger who was sitting next to me, said, when I'd finished, she said, I know it's none of my business. I'm so sorry, I shouldn't interfere, but you were writing so fast and it seemed so urgent, and now it's over. What were you doing? And I said, actually, I think I've just written a divine children's book. And I laughed because my mother would have hated me saying that, because she would never liked us to boast or, build ourselves up. And I felt my mother dead already on my shoulder saying that was a disgraceful thing to say. So I laughed shamefacedly when I said, I think I've written a divine children's story. And then I said to her, would you like a copy of it? And she said, oh, yes, I'd love one. Then I'll know what you've written. So I wrote it out again by hand. And I signed it, with love from Mem Fox. She didn't know who I was. And I gave it to her. I have no idea who she was, but she read it and she cried. And I thought, woo-hoo, we have got something here. We have got something here. And strangely, often when I read the book, adults will come up to me afterwards and say, surprised, I don't know what it was about that book, but I teared up at the end of it. They're really puzzled, and I think it's because the book is so tender, but not sentimental. It's not at all sentimental, but it's very, very tender. And it means a lot to me because our daughter lived for a long time in France, and we only have one child. This was when she was an adult, and her sign-off to me on the phone or on an email used to be, I kiss you on the nose. And she calls me Moppy because my hair looks like a mop. I kiss you on the nose, Moppy. And on email, I kiss you on the nose, Moppy. So the last line, but the next child born was truly divine, a sweet little child who was mine, all mine. And this little baby, as everyone knows, has 10 little fingers, 10 little toes, and 3 little kisses on the tip of its nose.